So this morning's presentation is all around mastermind groups, and obviously at the end of the presentation I would be delighted if you would like to join one of my groups in whatever format that is and work with me in some way, shape or form. That is essentially why I run the Accountants Mastermind and the Facebook group. Is to encourage us as a community to collaborate together and ultimately take action. Now, if it gets to the end of the presentation and working with me isn't something that you don't want to do, I am wholeheartedly committed to helping you create your own mastermind groups, as I say, with other groups of accountants, so a peer-to-peer network, or alternatively for your practices, which is something that we've done through Greenstones with Greenstones Business Masterminds. But with all of these things, as you will have, if you've seen me speak before about all of these things, the value and quality of any event or training or webinar, which is what we're doing today, is only determined by the action that you take after it. So when we get to the end of the presentation, be roughly 10:30, as I say, if you decide not to do something, then that is an action, but consciously decide not to do something rather than say, oh, well, I'll get around to it next week or whenever it is. So decide what you're going to do. Now, I very often get asked about what masterminding is, and I'm going to give you some examples this morning. And I am very often frustrated when I see the term mastermind used by other people when they don't actually mean mastermind. What they actually mean is brainstorming and instant fixes. Now, for me, masterminding is not about quick fixes. It's not about the 7 steps to heaven or the 3 ways to gain more referrals or the 7 keys to unlocking utopia or whatever. It's not about that. They're all surface level problems. Masterminding is about getting under your skin, getting to the root of the problem and then doing something about it. And when I talk through this presentation, some people, good morning, Sandy, over in the States, I've just seen you pop up. Some people, they talk a good game. As practitioners, we talk a good game. And I know I very often come up with ideas and concepts that I want to implement, but very often we struggle with the work. And there's a phrase that comes to mind for me a lot. Everybody wants to go to heaven. They want this perfect practice. They want this perfect business. They want this utopia, or what they believe is the utopia, but nobody wants to die. So everybody wants this heaven, but nobody actually wants to do the work or suffer the uncomfortableness, get out of their comfort zones in order to expand their own emotional states, their own beliefs, their own mechanisms and systems in order to get what they want. What they much prefer to do is rock up on a webinar, go to an event, Accountex or whatever it is, buy a set of wings. And at the moment, the sort of the in vogue thing is to buy an app. So they buy these wings and they stick them on a bike and then they pedal like, well, faster. Let's just say they pedal faster. And as they pedal, they keep trying to take off, but they're not because they're just sticking these wings on a bike. And then once those wings fail to take off, they get rid of float or fluidly or whatever it is, and they stick on a practice management software or whatever in order to stick a sticky plaster over the cut. Now, that's not what masterminding is about. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, because it still does with part of the best practice process that we go through. People come up with ideas and concepts that they share, and you think, oh, that's a good idea. Let's go and work on that. Let's implement that. But predominantly, it's about getting under the skin. So what is the causes of the problem rather than the symptoms of the problem? I'll flip that around and give you a slightly different take on it. This is a thing called a Johari window. And in life, in relationships, my relationship with you, your relationship with your loved ones and your team members, there are always 2 people. There is me, myself, and in this scenario, there is you, i.e. the others. So there are all the other people in the world. Now, I know things about myself, and there are also things that I don't know about myself. And I'll explain that a little bit more in a minute. And then there are things that you know about me as Simon, and there are also things that you don't know about me as Simon. So let's give you an example. So stuff that I know about me and you know about me. Well, I know that I'm running a webinar at the moment, and you're on this webinar, you're watching this video, so you know that I'm running this webinar, or I've ran this or recorded this video. So that's something that you know about me and I know about myself. Now, there are also things I think you'll share or admit that I know about myself that you don't know about about me. So the classic one that I always use for this is, and I'll just check to see who's on the meeting. Yeah, no, there's nobody in there that so you don't know, none of the people on this meeting know my favorite sexual position. So I know my favorite sexual position, but you don't. Now if I told you what that was, then you would know, and all of a sudden you'd move out of the yellow box down into the green box, and we would both know those things about each other. Now we don't have to share that in the mastermind sessions, but it gives you an idea, a flavor. The more vulnerable I am, the more that I disclose about myself, the more I share, the more you know about me, and therefore the more you can support me. Now, there is also this box over here. This is stuff that you know about me that I don't know about myself. So I might not think that I am charismatic, for example, whereas you believe that I am. I might not consider myself to be a good implementer, whereas you know that I am. So this is stuff that I don't know about myself, stuff that I am unaware of, so I am unconscious of. However, you as the outsider, you look in. Now, this very often manifests itself when we're talking with customers. You can look at a situation and think, well, I know you can't see your problem, but I can see your problem. It's as clear as day. Yeah. Now, when you're in that situation, obviously you should be sharing that from a place of peace, from a place of supporting somebody and helping them expand their information, their knowledge about themselves. Now, the top box is stuff where the magic happens. That is stuff that I don't know about me and you don't know about me. And through questioning and analyzing problems, the things that you think are the problems, the surface level problems, you discover the magic, the things that you should be working on within your business and ultimately within yourself in order to grow. And obviously, the more you focus on that, then the bigger the green box becomes, because we know more about each other. The trust builds, the vulnerability trust builds, and ultimately that box expands. And as a community, as a group, we all expand together. And that is, in a theoretical way, the way it works for me, the way that masterminds work for me. It's not about turning up and Simon speeching off about the 7 steps to whatever it is, or getting speakers in to tell you about how to communicate with your team and all that sort of stuff, and books that you read. That's all there, don't get me wrong, but it's more important than that. It's more fundamental for that, as you as a business, as you as a practice, and ultimately as you as a human being, if we get down to that level. So that's the Johari window. Somebody that went through that experience is Nicola. Lots of you on the call will know Nicola. This is a testimonial from Nicola. Nicola went through, she began a process. She learned about herself. She learned about what other members of the community thought about her. And over the course of doing that, she plucked up the courage, became courageous, or took the courageous decision to increase her prices by 10% overnight. And by doing that, her net profits went up 18% instantly. Now, having done that, she didn't lose any customers, and then she wished she'd gone on and increased it more. And I know, having spoken to Nicola a number of times since, that she has since done that. So that's an example of a process where the limiting belief, the concept that we held in mind, was holding Nicola back. That concept was challenged by other people in the group because they see something in Nicola that Nicola didn't see in herself. And that gave Nicola the confidence and belief to go out there and expand on what she was doing. So what types of networking, what type of mastermind groups are there out there? And I'm going to give you a flavor for it, because as I say, I'm not saying what we deliver, what I deliver is right for everybody, but I believe that everybody should be involved in a type of group. And over the years, I've been involved in every single one of these groups at different times. So mastermind groups, you can have industry specific groups and non-specific groups. So the Accountants Mastermind is an industry specific group. It is only open to accountants in practice, UK accountants in practice. You can also have a paid group or an unpaid group. Now, paid can be obviously time and money. So for lots of people, the bigger commitment to the process is the time that they need to commit to do it, not the financial impact. Although there needs to be some financial impact, so I earn some money out of it, and B, so you're committed to the process. Now, I just want to briefly go over this. What happens is the more that you commit in time and money, then the higher the accountability. So if you make no commitment, you're suffering no pain of being part of a group, then the accountability goes down because it has no real effect on whether you bother to implement stuff or not. So I would argue the more money or more time you commit to something, the more accountable you become, the higher the driver for you to actually take action. And then the problem with that, though, is that the social aspect of it goes down. So if you're committed and focused on what it is that you want to achieve and get a return on your investment, I'm not saying there's no social aspect, because the communities are very tight. We get to learn about wives and daughters and sons and husbands and all the other stuff that goes on outside of it, but it's not as sociable as, say, turning up at a one-day conference the night before, or a zero con party and getting what should I say, under the influence of alcohol. So I'm not saying that people don't have a drink, because they do, but they wouldn't turn up the following morning with a hangover the size of whatever, because it's not about that. It's about challenging yourself to get better and being accountable. So that's the plus side and the downside of that. With regards to industry specific, obviously, the more specific the people are within the group, the more focused the conversations can be. The opposite effect of that is it's more difficult to challenge industry norms. So if you've got a group of accountants all based in Norfolk, all with between 5 to 10 team members, you can more or less guarantee the problems that they're experiencing in Norfolk with 5 to 10 team members are exactly the same. So it can become quite insular, which is why within the Accountants Mastermind, we have outside speakers. So the speakers that come in from outside of the industry in order to shake up those industry norms. So let's put some names on it. So if you're not paying for something and it's not industry specific, generally speaking, it turns into a networking event. Now, I know some networking events you have to pay for, but a lot of them are cheap as chips and not very expensive, so you don't have to commit, and if you don't want to show up, then people don't. So that tends to be, for me, the least effective type of community that you can belong to with regards to improving and developing your business. Because what happens is you go along and it's very easy to sell or want to sell. So exposing your weaknesses in that environment is not the best thing to do, because people look at it and think, okay, well, he's poor at time management or whatever it is, and therefore I don't want to use you. But that is an option for you. So create a networking community. You can pull some customers together within your accountancy practice and you have a conversation. Invariably, it will turn into a referral conversation, and you can work with each other. I'm not saying it's bad. It's better than nothing. But for me, it's not about business development. If we then move over into a more focused, a more industry specific. Now, I've been a member of a peer group for, well, best part of 20 years now, where I meet with a group of accountants on a regular basis. And I know there's lots of other people, and some of the people on the group on the call today are members of accountancy peer groups. And basically what we do is we rotate the chair, and we meet at different people's offices or in a hotel, and we talk about life and the accountancy industry, etc., etc. Now, that peer group is very good. It's been the backbone of my development. The social is very high, because we meet the night before, we talk about this, that, and all the rest of it. We moan about life and where we're at. And it's a fantastic community. If I have a problem now, I know I could pick the phone up to any one of them and they would share with me the solution to my problem, or challenge me on the solution to the problem. The downside of that is there's no accountability. The chair rotates. Nobody is being paid to chase up on the actions. Nobody is monitoring the actions. So I'm not saying there's no accountability, because you obviously don't want to come back the next time and talk about the stuff that you've not done, but it's a lot less than if I was paying for something and demanding a return on the investment that I put into it. So if there was a toss-up between networking and peer group, definitely do the peer group. That's an absolute must. We then come over onto the yes paid, but non-challenged, non-industry. So things like Vistage groups or owner managed business groups or Academy of Chief Executives, which has now changed its name. But stuff or groups where you pay, and in some cases with the likes of Vistage, you're looking at over £1,000 a month to be a part of that process. And they hold you accountable. There's a proper trained chair facilitator that looks after the group and holds the people, holds the teams, holds the groups accountable. And then obviously over in the top right hand box, which is the one that I am passionate about, the one that I'm talking to you about today, is the Accountants Mastermind. So it's a peer group that is paid for and has the added element of accountability and community that's driven by a trained facilitator. So that's the different types of groups. If you do nothing today other than pick one of those 4 groups and either join one or set one up, I will have achieved my goal. And obviously, I'm going to say to you, join the Accountants Mastermind, or at least have a conversation with me today about how you can be involved in that. And I've got 2 groups coming up, 2 new groups coming up at the end of this conversation. One specifically around COVID-19 support, which lots of people have asked, how can they. The Facebook group and the WhatsApp group particularly has lots of information. How can I be involved in a tighter knit community for if I don't want to be a part of the big mastermind group, how can I be involved in a tighter knit community to help me through this crisis? And I've come up with an idea that I will share with you in order to enable you to do that. Now, 243 teams. I've talked to you a bit about how people solve service level problems. Over the years, we have been trained, particularly in the Western world, to solve people's problems. Team members come to us with questions, we deliver the answer to them. At school, the teacher stood up and said, "What's the capital of France?" We stuck a hand up and we said, "Paris." Yeah, we are trained that delivering answers is good. Now, this is where a really skilled facilitator makes a massive difference, and a trained group makes a massive difference to the outcomes that you receive. So you cannot, as a human, certainly in the Western world, you cannot help but come up with a solution. Now, what you need to do very often is analyze the problem before you come up with a solution, because the problem that's presented, the thing that somebody comes up with, what they share with you very often isn't the problem that they've got. Now, this happens all of the time when customers come to us within the accountancy practice. They present a problem, i.e. we're running out of money, we need a bank overdraft, for example, and the easy thing for us to do is do a set of cash flow projections and go to the bank. Now, if we analyze why they need that bank overdraft, there's a whole host of reasons as to why they might need that. Debtor collection, not asking the right questions, sales price too low, etc., etc., etc. You know all of those different things. And it's important that we analyze and question that solution. So 243 teams in a tournament. I'm going to ask you a question, and what I want you to do is think about the problem before you give me an answer. And I'm going to ask you to put the answer, so in the chat box, if you change it so it says to Simon as opposed to everybody, if you change it to Simon, if you haven't done this exercise before, if you can put in the chat box how many games, so 243 teams in a tournament, is a straightforward knockout tournament. How many games need to be played in order to get to a winner? Okay, so there's 243 teams in a tournament. It's a straightforward knockout tournament. How many games need to be played in order to get to a winner? And yes, you can have buys. So if you'd just like to think about that and come up with an answer and pop the answer in the chat box, that would be that would be great, and I'll share some of those. And obviously, well, normally when I run this exercise, I give people a prize if they've won. But also I'll throw a virtual sweet at you today. So if you've got, David says 1 game needs to be played. Yeah, how many games in total, David? It's a good response. Shaz has got the right answer. I think you might have seen it before, Shaz, so I'll share that in a minute. Sarah says she's got absolutely no idea. Ashley says 7. That's an interesting answer, Ashley. I don't quite know the logic behind that. Craig's got the right answer. Well done, Craig. Andrew says he's got no idea. Simon says 8. Again, a bit close to 7. There must be some logic behind there that I've not seen. Weejay's got the right answer. Jenny's got 218. Jason's got the right answer. Well done, Jason. Craig cheated. Well, now that's a really interesting one, Craig. Did you cheat or did you do the research? Now, if you analyze the problem and looked at the problem, then you've actually done what I said you would do or should do. Dave's got the right answer. Well done, Dave. Michelle says no idea. Steve says 243. And Stephen says 244. So to put you out of your misery, the answer is 242. So how do we work that out without going straight to the solution? What most people do is they give up and say, I don't know any idea, like Vanessa does, or they work up or work down. So they say, right, 243 teams, it's a straightforward knockout competition. Let's say 240. Half of that is 120, half of that's 60, half of that's 30. Hang on a minute, 15. That's not quite going to work. And then add the 3. Oh, I give up. I can't be asked to do it. And then other people go 1 game, 2 games, 4 games, 8 games, 64, 132, 268 minus 243. And again, they give up. So they go straight to working out the solution as opposed to analyzing the problem. So the problem was, got 243 teams in a tournament, straightforward knockout tournament. How many games need to be played in order to get to a winner? Well, how many losers are there in each game? Well, there is always 1 loser. And in the entire tournament, how many winners are there? Well, there is 1 winner. So if every game has 1 loser, then there needs to be 242 games played. So 242 losers in order to get that 1 winner. And that works, obviously, whatever number you invent or come up with. So if there were 763 teams in a tournament, then there needs to be 762 games played in order to get a winner. So if you think about the problem before you come up with a solution, very often the solution presents itself far easier than trying to work it out. And it's always a 6-step process to come up with a solution. And this is something, if you're going to run your own groups, it's very difficult to do to start with because it feels uncomfortable and a bit clunky. But I'm going to talk you through the process of analyzing a problem, creative thinking to come up with a solution. Now, as I'm doing this, everybody in the groups, the first time they do it, they still go to the solution. So you need a solutions police person, but it's as I say, it's a 6-step process. Step 1 is to find the problem. Now, sometimes you'll have people come up and they'll say, Simon, I don't know what the problem is, or I've not got a problem, or they present you with a problem and it's pretty weak. So you can ask some questions, some examples of questions that you could ask. I'm going to give you 3 now. And as I ask those questions, you might like to just think of your answers as you're watching this and write the answers down. Yeah. So as I ask the question, what comes up for you, write the answers down, and then you might like to go away and work on those. Because there's some magic in there for you. And if you write down an answer to a question and you don't know where to start, then please email me, WhatsApp me, Facebook message me, or whatever, and I will help you work through the process. So here are the questions. First question, what are you currently tolerating in your practice? So what are you currently tolerating in your practice? What comes to mind? So if something comes to mind, team members, customers, poor computer systems, or whatever it is, write that down, because that's a problem that you're currently experiencing. It's taking up emotional energy that you can then resolve and work with and work on as a part of this process. Next question. Where have you allowed the new, shiny, exciting idea to overtake your priorities for this quarter? Now, this is a question I ask myself all of the time. As an entrepreneur, as a creative person, I am always seeing new shiny objects, new shiny things, and think, oh, that's a good idea. I need to do that. I need to do that demo. It's a free trial, etc., etc. And my to-do list gets massive. I get overwhelmed. I lose focus on the priority for the quarter or the priority for the week. And then at the end of the week, I feel as like I've not achieved anything. So a question I ask myself continually, where have you allowed the new, shiny, exciting idea to overtake your priorities for the quarter? If something comes up for you, park the new shiny idea, deal with the priority, and then once you've done the priority, then go back to the new shiny idea. And the last one, what decision are you postponing in the irrational hope that the problem will somehow resolve itself? So is there something that comes to mind when I ask that question? What decision are you postponing in the irrational hope that the problem will somehow resolve itself? Now, we very often have things in the back of our head, challenges in the back of our head, problems, decisions in the back of our head, and we keep putting them off. We keep putting them off on the hope that someday it will disappear. Sometimes it's team members. So we really know that we need to have a conversation about a team member about something, so dress code or attitude or something like that. And then we rationalize it back and say, well, it's not really that bad. Hopefully they will leave at some point in the future. So if something come up for you, an answer to that question, what decision are you postponing in the irrational hope that the problem will somehow go away? If something came up for you, write it down, have a conversation with me, have a conversation with your peers, and work out what it is that you need to do about it, because it will be draining you emotionally. It will be draining your emotional energy. So that's step one, come up with a problem. Step two is share the problem. So we talk about the problem, we give our opinion on the problem, and the other candidates, the other members of the group, listen to the problem. Once we've shared the problem, we then analyze the problem. Now, this is the important bit. We ask questions for clarity, not questions for solutions. And this is where you need to be really careful, because people will come up with all sorts of solutions posed as questions. So let me give you an example, a real life example that happened within one of the groups recently. The problem was that the practice owner couldn't get off the internet in the evening. So the problem that was presented was I'm getting WhatsApp messages, Facebook messages, emails, text messages from customers, from clients, and I spend all night answering emails, WhatsApp, etc., etc. And by the time I'm finished, it's 10 o'clock and I am ready for bed. That was the problem. He shared that problem with the group. Now, you will automatically now, as you're listening to this, be coming up with solutions for that problem. Even though I told you not to do that, that's the worst thing that you can do. And you'll be coming up with things like autoresponders, turn the bloody thing off, get somebody else to monitor it for them, etc., etc., etc. All solutions. Now, within the groups, you can write those solutions down, not share them. But the question is, or the thing you should be doing or need to be doing, is analyzing that problem. So you ask questions around who is it that's contacting you at night? Why do you feel the need, etc., etc. Now, as we analyze that problem, you then go on to restate the problem. And as we analyze that problem, it became clear that the problem wasn't the social media and responding to the tweets and all that sort of stuff. The problem was that he didn't want to speak to his wife. And the reason why he didn't want to speak to his wife, because he felt if he spoke to his wife, she shouted at him. So what he was doing was creating this work, these social media messages and the emails and all the rest of it, in order to have an excuse, a reason not to speak to his wife. Now, we restated the problem, relationship with wife. We're not marriage, none of us are marriage guidance counselors, but can you see the difference in the solutions that we would provide, because we understood that that was the problem rather than the face problem of dealing with social media? The solutions to that were completely different. As I say, we're not marriage guidance counselors. Lots of us are married. We are in relationships within the group, and therefore we could provide ideas and opportunities around that. And once he's come up with one that he was happy with, he then set an action to solve that problem. That action gets recorded within the system, which I'll share with you in a minute. And once Ashley's just asked, did my husband write in? No, Ashley, it wasn't anything to do with you. But that, as you can see, so we set the action, and then I monitor, the Accountants Mastermind, Mark and I monitor and nag you to make sure that those actions get solved. So that is fundamentally, for me, the importance of the Mastermind group. Most groups that you'll be involved in, most exercises that you go on, most conferences that you go on, you will state your problem and then everybody will rock in. So you'll do one, you'll do a bit of two, and then everybody will rock in at number 6, and they will be your hero and they will solve the problem for you. As I say, that's fundamentally the most important part of this process. And if you're in the Facebook group or on the WhatsApp group, you will very often see me asking questions for clarity rather than delivering a solution. Now, that's not to say that there aren't occasions when you need to deliver a solution quickly. If the house is on fire, you don't need to analyze the fire. You just need to start putting it out with a fire extinguisher. But most of the time, you need to work out what it is that you should be focusing on and then work with that. So that's the process that we need to go through. Michael's just asked, what was the action? The action was that he was going to go home and explain to his wife why he was doing the action that he was doing in a calm and rational manner, because obviously there's a long story to it, or a bit more of a story to it. His wife was upset that he was on social media and whatnot at the night, over the night time. And as you can imagine, as it turned out, she was angry because he was doing it. He was doing it because she was angry. And once they had an open and vulnerable conversation around both of their positions, as if by magic, it evaporated, because they both want the same thing. They both wanted to be in a loving and committed relationship. So it as much as that's challenging, and from the outside in, it can be seen as very vulnerable and provocative and quite emotionally charged, which it can often be because of the environment that you're in, and everybody's in that environment to inspire, challenge, and support you to be the best that you want to be. And it works both ways. It's all done from a place of love, a place from wanting to support people to grow and get better. So that was the action, Michael. Thank you, and Ashley, thank you. It's a really interesting approach. It's really is empowering, and I know I've experienced it lots of times before. The first two or three times it can be a bit scary because there's lots of times when we talk about wanting to change. So we'll talk a good game. We'll say, oh, this, that, and all the rest of it, and we're going to change the world. But when people challenge us on it, whether we actually want to do it, and then we become vulnerable and become, I keep using the word exposed. I don't mean exposed. I mean open to development. Then very often we have to make decisions that we don't really want to make, because it's easier just to be fed up and moan about it, as opposed to doing something about it, taking control of our businesses, of our lives, and developing and taking the courageous action. And it takes, say, a lot of practice. You have to be very conscious as you're going through the process. So if anybody's got any questions about the process and how it works, then I will gladly answer them. Stick them in the Q&A, email me afterwards. And if anything's come up with any of those questions that I asked earlier that you feel as though you need support on, then again, I will gladly help you through that process. Now, the actions get recorded. At the end of every full mastermind session, the members put at least 3 actions into Coach Accountable. Coach Accountable records the actions. These are it's a dummy account, a dummy screenshot, so there's no confidentiality issues on this. They get recorded. And then when you do the action, you mark them off. We have a little Excel spreadsheet, as you would imagine, in the back. And then once we work with those actions, we record them. They get nagged in the Facebook group, and then the statistics get published. And that's how I measure my return on investment. Adnan says, are there any problems that can't be fixed? There are problems that can't be fixed, and they are God's problems, if I can be so blunt as to say that. So God's problems are things like the weather, coronavirus, although there's an argument that can be fixed, earthquakes and things like that. They are outside of our control as human beings. All other problems effectively are relationship problems. So there are 2 people in every relationship, or at least 2 people in every relationship, and every single problem that you have in your life will be a relationship problem. If there was nobody else on this earth other than you, you might be lonely, but you wouldn't have any problems. So I truly believe if somebody is committed and wants to do something, then every problem can be solved. If the problem is you can't run 100 meters in 10 seconds, then perhaps you just need to reappraise your goal. That problem, whatever you do physically, is never going to, it's a God's problem, never going to be resolved. But the majority of problems, as I say, are relationship problems, and therefore can be fixed. So the stuff gets recorded in Coach Accountable. This is a list of actions. At the end of the year, you can see all the different things that you've done, all the different things that you've implemented. We have planning sheets, you have buddy calls, and you can complete the data all within Coach Accountable. We have metrics. A common one for members is they want to lose weight. So we can record weight in the system so you can see how you're progressing. Some people want to have more client contact, more proactive calls, or focus on a KPI and be held accountable in the group for the KPI. So we set up the metrics. Coach Accountable is a fantastic piece of software. I've been using it since 2012, right from the beginning. John is the chap that owns it. He's a fantastic chap. If you have any problems, go and speak to John, and away John goes. Now, if you want to use Coach Accountable, I have an affiliate link. So if you sign up to Coach Accountable using that affiliate link, thank you, Mark, for putting it in the chat box. I get about 3p a month off the back of your contribution, but it would help me. I really like John. I've worked with John, as I say, for 8 years now, nearly 9 years, and it would help me to give back to John if John knew that you was going to work with him because of the conversation that you've had with me. So the money's irrelevant from my perspective, but the kudos with John is it works for me. So use that affiliate link that's in the chat box. So back on Coach Accountable, you also have groups, and as you'll see, there's people you can add groups together. So the members that are in group one come together in a group so they can see what each other's doing and also hold each other accountable. So that's Coach Accountable. This is in the pack that I'm going to offer you at the end. If you don't want to pay for Coach Accountable, it's only 50 quid a month or something like that. It's not ruinous. If you don't want to do that, you just need an action planner. This is the action planner that we make notes on. I will gladly send you that as a PDF, and you can rebrand it and use it as you wish, either within your peer group or within your mastermind group for your accountancy practice. One of the stats that I'm most proud of, and this has dropped back a little bit over the last 4 or 5 weeks because of the coronavirus, but 97.5%, is actually at 97.3% at the moment, but 97.5% of actions set are completed by members each month. Yeah, so if you set an action, if the group sets an action, 100 actions, 97 of those actions get completed. They're the ones that don't get completed, don't get forgotten about. They get rolled over to the next month or the next meeting, and then they get completed. So there's one member of the group that's had an action set since February 2018 that keeps getting rolled. That's the oldest action that I've got on the system, but it keeps getting rolled over. And I know at some point she will complete that action because she's told me that she will. So that's why I'm passionate about the actions completed. Now, I have had people in the groups that haven't completed the actions. Now, I understand that life gets in the way, cats die and all that sort of stuff. And there will be some months when you're not as efficient as you want to be. Coronavirus gets in the way. But if that goes on over a period of time, it's like a bad apple in a box. That potentially spreads over the other members. So if you want to get to the root of the problem, implement the problem, and do something about it, take action about it, I will gladly support you through that process, as will the other members of the group. If you want to rock up, have a nice social, glass of wine, talk a good game and not do anything about it, then you won't be a member of the group for very long. So that's one of my stats that I am particularly proud of. Michael's asked, are you going to track this month's actions for this percentage? I'm going to have a long weekend. So Michael is a member of one of the groups. And yes, I am monitoring the actions. That we're meeting on Wednesday, the full mastermind meeting virtually on Wednesday. Yes, Michael, I am monitoring the actions for this coming week. Although I don't, they're low at the moment, as is the other group is low at the moment because we've been swamped with coronavirus stuff. So I'm going to be a bit gentle on everybody, or gentler on everybody this time. One of the questions in the registration process was what numbers have changed. This is a chap called Michael Hem. Michael's worked with me since the early days. Michael does one-to-one stuff with me as well as being a part of the mastermind group. Just to give you a flavour as to how your numbers can change. One of the questions was around turnover of 250,000. Well, this is a really good example of how you can be in those in that box. So when Michael first started working with us, he had an average fee of £1,375 per year. That was at this time. This is back in May of last year when these stats were prepared, ready for Accountex. He'd gone from 1,375 to 3,426 quid, and I now know that average fee is higher. He'd maintained the number of clients, so the number of clients had gone up from 229 to 240. And then there's some personal tax stuff and whatnot in the back there. The direct debits, when we first met, he was collecting 3K a month. He's now collecting, or at that point, he was collecting 32K, and his debtor days had gone down from 95 days to minus 18 days. So I'm not saying that that was all to do with what I did with him and what we did within the group, because Michael needed to take the action. He needed to do the work. And because he listened, developed, got out of his comfort zone, chose what he was going to do to have the most impact, and then took the action. These are the results that he had. And the one that I am perhaps the most proud of is that he managed to get from 3 team members to 6 team members, and one of those team members started taking over the work from Michael. So they now handle, at that point, they handled £150,000 worth of GRF. So he was developing his business, the business was growing, and he was also developing his team. He was encouraging the team to take responsibility, to take ownership of some customers and develop in Michael's stead. So that's the, Michael's one of the shining. I'm going to share some other numbers with you in a minute as well about other things that other members have done. But that gives you a flavor, whoever asked the question, that gives you a flavor of some of the things that people can do, some of the numbers that we work on. Ashley's asked, how often does the Mastermind group meet, and does it meet on specific days and times? I'll get to that in a little while, Ashley. So I'm now going to talk to you about what the Accountants Mastermind does, what the product is, what you can become a part of. At the end of the day, at the end of the session, if you don't want to join me, you want to set it up on your own, I am going to give you the full agenda so you can run your own day if you want to, exactly the same as what I do. I'm going to give you the best practice sheets, which I'll share briefly with you in a minute, the action planner, which I've already shared, and also the hot seat preparation worksheet. So not everybody uses it, but some people, before they come along to the mastermind, they sit down and work through their problem on the hot seat preparation sheet in order to help give clarity when they're talking to the members. Very often they'll work through that hot seat preparation sheet and they get to the end of it and they've solved their own problem because it just helped them become conscious of their thinking. But at the end, we'll share in the chat box a URL where you can go to, stick in your name and your email address, and then Mark or I will email you those documents so you've got it. So what's the format for the day? Well, the basic structure of the current masterminds where we meet physically is this. We review actions and celebrate successes. So if you're going to run a mastermind, it's very important that you focus on what people said they was going to do last time, hold them accountable, bring that into this new meeting, and then celebrate the successes and support them if they have not managed to achieve it. So that's always the first thing that we do. We then generally move on to best practice. Now, best practice is the members' opportunity to share things that they've learned, things that they've discovered that might help the other people in the group. So very often it's books, it might be webinars, courses, apps on the phone, life hacks, podcasts that they've listened to, software that they've used, industry inside knowledge that they've spoken to X and they think that's a good idea, etc., etc. So that's the opportunity to share knowledge. We then move on to having a guest speaker or me. So if you're running one for your accountancy practice, my argument definitely to start with is that you as the owner of the practice delivers the content. Now, one of the questions on the sheet was, how do you come up with the content? How do you know what information to share? Well, it's really easy. You just ask the customers. So what's the biggest problem that you've got at the moment? What are you tolerating at the moment? They will tell you. Generally speaking, it's not enough work or team members. So they're challenged by a team member. So you then just generate content to answer the questions that they've come up with and allow them then to talk around it. So if you're running one for your own practice, my advice certainly to start with is you deliver the content, you be the hero. But once you get going, then you get guest speakers in. So within the Accountants Mastermind, I have world-class, proper paid speakers come in that I know through the Professional Speaking Association. So I have people like Nigel Risner, who I know lots of people will have heard of at seminars and at conferences. Nigel talks about team communication skills. This chap is Malcolm Smith. Malcolm Smith talks about negotiation. Malcolm has presented to both groups, and lots of members within the group have used Malcolm's negotiating skills to either increase prices or reduce prices from supplier. So they've got the whole of the year's investment in the mastermind, the cash investment in the mastermind, back purely on Malcolm's technique. And if anybody's interested, I use Malcolm's technique to negotiate a price reduction on the car that I bought. Not very successfully to start with, but I managed to get my head around it in the end and come back to it. So I'll gladly share that with you. Celine Morin, she came in and talked about our individual wellness. So if we're not well as business owners, as business leaders, we're not getting the right vitamins, sleep, diet, alcohol, etc., then we can't perform at our best. So she came in to talk about that. Another great session. This is Pete Wilkinson. Pete Wilkinson talks about elite teams. Pete provoked me and the members on lots of different levels. It's fantastic. That's why we have a separate website to attract new team members, because of the conversations that Pete had. That's why we have a brochure to attract new team members. And then this chap, Luke Quilter, who I'm going to get in the not too distant future back again. But Luke talks about SEO, Facebook, digital marketing, and all those sort of things. So all of these speakers, there's no sales process. They don't rock up and get you to run to the back of the room to buy their books or anything like that. I am paying them to deliver their best information to the members. Simple as that. They come along, they share the information, they leave, we debrief on the information that they've shared, and then we take the action, convert it into accountancy speak, and then implement it. We also do benchmarking. If you want, not everybody wants to take part in this process, but I'll share some of the results. Thank you, Stephen. Malcolm Smith is excellent. Yeah, Malcolm's coming back again in the not too distant future. We do benchmarking. We have 7 metrics. I will gladly share those metrics with you. And in fact, towards the end of the conversation, I will share how those numbers work. You share those numbers, you get your numbers back, and everybody else is in the group, so you can work out where you're good and where you're bad and compete against yourself. This is a chap called James Sherd. James, when he first did the benchmarking, realized that he was operating completely in the dark. And after he went through the process, he in particular was focusing on his net profit. If anybody wants to read that, then just email me and I'll send you the whole testimonial. But basically, having gone through the process, looked at his net profit, he realized that he could save 6% of turnover. So just purely looking at his benchmarking numbers, he could save 6% of turnover, and over an 18-month period, increase his profits by 10%. Now, James has got over, best part of 20 people working for him. So you can imagine what sort of figures James is turning over and how much that then has saved him. And again, that saving has more than paid for the cash contribution that he has to make in order to come along to the process, to the mastermind. And then we do the individual hot seats, which I'll spend quite a bit of time talking about. And then at the end, always do the action planning, and the action plans, the actions that we come up with go within Coach Accountable. And then we chase them through the system in order to make sure that you do them. Now, up until coronavirus, we had 2 different versions of a mastermind meetup. We had the meetup, which was a day, and then we had the full mastermind. So I'll just briefly run you through the different aspects that we've got within these 2 things. And then I'm going to tell you how it's changed because of the coronavirus, the situation we find ourselves in. So the meetup, we never met the night before for dinner. The mastermind groups always meet the night before. Speakers, we have none in the meetup. We have world-class speakers, have you seen, in the Accountants Mastermind. We have a WhatsApp group within the full mastermind. We don't for the meetup. Benchmarking, we have that for the full mastermind. We didn't for the meetup. Catch-up calls, we have those in the mastermind. We didn't for the meetup. The meetings are bi-monthly, Ashley. So the full mastermind meets every other month, every 8 weeks. The meetup meetings, they were sporadic. They was roughly once a quarter. The trust in the full mastermind is total. These are people that you're meeting on a regular basis, speaking to almost daily within the WhatsApp groups. And the trust builds. As I say, you get to know the ins and outs of the highs and lows of where people are. The trust in the meetups is high, but because you're new to it, there's only so far you can go in the space of a day. Sense of community is complete within the mastermind, with a full mastermind, within the meetup, and I'm hoping that you'll see within the Facebook group, the sense of community is high, the sense of sharing is high. Support from other members is informal in the meetup. Sometimes they carry on conversations afterwards. Within the mastermind, it's always there, it's constant. Within the full mastermind, you have access to other people's systems and you have full access to the greenstone systems. The meetup, it's occasionally, and you have limited access depending on what the topic was. Access to me within the full mastermind, you can speak to me all the time. Within the meetup, it was on the day. Problem solving, we get a few. In the full mastermind, it was full on. Idea sharing, again, every day within the full mastermind, but only on the day within the meetup. Momentum is constant, and it was only sporadic on the meetup. And accountability is total on the mastermind because I'm monitoring it and making sure that people are doing it. Whereas on the meetups, it was only basically on the day, and then we did a little bit afterwards. So I'm just going to knock that question out because I've answered that one for you, Ashley. So it's bi-monthly. Now, that was what used to happen. Those groups, the full mastermind group at the moment, are meeting virtually. The way you join that group is you come along, you test drive the group, and if you like it, then you continue coming. I don't believe it's fair for people to come along at the moment and test drive a group that's being run virtually because you don't get the full experience. The meetups, the one-day meetups, I had some in the diary for May and June, but given where we are at the moment, they probably won't go ahead, but we will see what happens. So today, I'm now going to share with you 2 opportunities for you to work with me closer and create 2 new communities if you want to be involved in it. So I'll just press that. So the full mastermind group is £445 plus the VAT per month. There is no minimum commitment, so you don't have to buy a year or anything like that. If you come along and you stop wanting to come, you don't like it, you don't want to come anymore, I don't want to make you come along for 12 months. So there's no minimum period. There is no notice period. So if you don't feel as though you're getting value, you just stop paying and stop coming. Yeah. So it's 445 plus the VAT per month. If you want to come to the full mastermind when it starts again physically and we meet, you also pay the hotel accommodation on top. So there's a 24-hour rate. It's about 60 quid a month. I sort it all out for you, so you don't have to worry about that, but it covers your bed and breakfast and your evening meal. So that's the old one. The new version of this, obviously, it's all going to be online. And we're not going to meet the night before because we're not allowed. So that disappears. And we're not going to meet every other month. We're going to meet bi-weekly. So instead of sitting down and having 8 hours together over the course of the day, we're going to have 4 conversations of roughly 2 hours. And we're going to spread the speakers, the best practice, and the hot seats over those 8 weeks, over those fortnights meetings every 4 weeks. So it's not a big thing, it's more regular. My fear in doing that, to be totally honest with you, is that we end up setting lots of little actions that get completed rather than big actions. Mentally, I can resolve myself to the fact that as long as you're doing something and you're doing lots of little actions in this time where we've got lots of other things going on, I am happy with that because at least some progress is being made. As the groups develop, and we become to get to know each other, then there will be a focus certainly on quarterly planning and quarterly actions, but I will worry about that when I get there. So the opportunity is to create, well, I've got a community that's being created. There's already 2 members in the community that want to start on the 28th of April. On this way, we just don't meet the night before and we meet bi-weekly as opposed to daily, and you get everything that you would get on the normal full mastermind group. And again, that's 445 plus the VAT per month, no minimum contract, no notice period. Come along and see if you like it. And if you don't, for whatever reason, you stop coming. The first meetup is on the 28th of April. And again, I'll share with you how you can do that in a little while. The first meet is on the 28th of April, and that is free. So you can come along on that morning. It'll be a bit longer than the normal 2 hours in order for us to get to know each other. But you can come along on that morning and experience it. And if you like it, the first invoice will come out on the 1st of May. In exchange, or instead of the meetup, I'm launching a COVID-19 group. Now, the COVID-19 group is, as I said earlier, a more intimate group. So it's like the full mastermind and the full WhatsApp group, but it will be limited to 12 members. So lots of people are saying there's all this stuff going on out there, Simon. What I'd really value is a tighter knit community where we can have perhaps more rational conversations, less emotional conversations. So this is the COVID-19 group. And it's basically, for me, between now and the end of June, so the 30th of June, it's replacing the meetups. So definitely not going to meet the night before. There will be a WhatsApp group with this, just the same as there is with the full mastermind. The meetings will be bi-weekly, just the same as the full mastermind group. There will be constant support from the other members. There will be access to me all of the time, WhatsApp, email, Facebook, etc., etc. And we will also do the full-on problem solving, the idea sharing, the momentum, and we'll have the accountability. So the COVID-19 support group, the only real difference between the full mastermind is that it's limited. So it will stop on the 30th of June, and we will almost certainly have no speakers. There's one speaker that I might introduce over those 5 meetings, which is if we meet every other week between now and the end of June, there will be 5 meetings. So that group will stop. So the online group will continue past the 30th of June. The COVID-19 group will stop on the 30th of June. If you would like to be a member of that, it's 427 quid plus the VAT, payable on day 1 for you to join, and then nothing else. If you get to the end of June and say, okay, I don't like it, I've not had 427 quid worth of value, Simon, which I find really impossible to believe. But if you get to that point and you've not had that value, then I will gladly give you your money back. So there are your 2 options. 445 plus the VAT carries on forever, well, for as long as you want it to, or 427 plus the VAT for the COVID-19, and it carries on until the end of June. Those prices, there's a couple of questions in here. Those prices, I have to respect the full mastermind group. So it's 427. It's a one-off, VJ. For the COVID-19 group, it's for 2 months, but it's a one-off figure. It's 427 plus the VAT. I can't be asked to send 2 invoices and collect 2 payments is along the short of it. So if you want to join the COVID-19, there'll just be 1 invoice raised for 427, and that's the lot. And I've lost my track. But anyway, so if you want to do it for your customers, work out where the value is, what you think your customers will pay for. So within Greenstones, we're charging less than that, but we have less speakers and we have less meetings, because that's the feedback that we got from our customers. If you're interested in setting them up for your own customers, then I will gladly have a conversation with you about all the different pricing decisions and how you might want to set those up. Michelle's asking, the COVID-19 group is not just about COVID-19 issues. It's the same principles, but similar exactly right, Michelle. Yeah. So I've called it COVID-19 because it's going to be whilst COVID-19 is on. But no, it's exactly going to have the accountability. I'm going to, generally speaking, it will be me that's providing the content. But as I say, I've got a couple of speakers that I will probably add into that. And it'll be the WhatsApp group, access to me, Greenstone systems if you want them, etc., etc. It's just, I'm limiting it because I know there's some people in the group, in the Facebook group, that don't want to commit to 445 a month and the full mastermind, but they could do with some support right now because of the situation they find themselves in. And how they are working. They feel as though they need some support. And there's 1 or 2 people that have shared with me that they feel guilty because they're not contributing to Simon's world and they're taking a lot and not giving anything back. So it's an opportunity for some people like that perhaps want to contribute. But that's where that is. So I see you've got 7 options. And Mark, if you could put the feedback form in the chat box for me, I'm 1 minute over, but if you could put the feedback form in the chat box, you've got 7 options that you can take. You can do absolutely nothing, which as far as I'm concerned, that's the worst thing that you can do. you can carry on in the Facebook group and the WhatsApp groups. They are not going anywhere. I love those groups. I think it's been a fantastic experience. I am so pleased that I created those groups, and we're working with those groups. So you can carry on as you are, playing along with it. Mark has just put in the chat box. If you go to that URL, the accountantsmastermind.com/OMS, a Microsoft Forms will open up for you. You just put your name and email address and then tick. So if you want to be part of the full mastermind, the full virtual mastermind, say you do. If you want to be part of the COVID-19, tick the box, say you do, and we'll be in touch. If you want the resources, just tick the box for the resources because you want to start your own, and then I'll make sure that I email those resources to you. If you want to wait until the full physical mastermind starts again in June or July or whenever it is, then tick that box and I will gladly do that. So if you want to cut and paste that URL into your web browser now and go off and fill that in, please do. So they're your first two options. Option 3, set up your own. If you want to set up your own, please do. I will gladly support you in that process because it's fantastic. And the better you are at doing it, the more value that you will get out of it, the more value your peers will get out of it if you set up an accountant one, and more value your customers will get out of it. So I will gladly support you in that process. Another option, which I've not talked about, I've not had time to talk about, is you can work with me on a one-to-one basis, which will cost you anywhere between 10 and 14K, depending on what you want. You can wait for the physical one to start again and test drive it at 445 a month. You can start working on your practice now with a virtual mastermind, which starts on the 28th of April, or you can join the COVID-19 emergency group, which is 427 plus the VAT to the 30th of June. And that starts on the 1st of May, which is a Friday. And all you need to do, as I say, is go to that URL and I will gladly sort that out, or Mark will sort that out over the course of today and Monday, whichever one you want to do. One of the questions on the form was around the numbers. So just to give you a flavour, these are accurate up until the 31st of October of last year. So in the 12 months up until the 31st of October, on the benchmarking numbers, the average team happiness increased by 10.6% across all the members that completed the benchmarking. Customer happiness stayed constant at 9 out of 10. The average fee per customer increased by 9.4% to 3,133 quid. So it's funny because you focus on things and you have these conversations with people, and the mere conversations with people was driving up their average fee. Team cost to admin dropped, so it reduced from 1.4% to 52.2%, and that's allowing £75,000 for the owner's salary. So the salary costs are increased to have a salary for the business owner. The extra work orders invoice to turnover, that went up by 10.7% to 13%. I personally think a good number for practices is to be invoicing at least 15% of turnover as extra work orders. Extra work orders includes things like cash flow projections, IFA commissions, R&D claims, and things like that. And then the magic number, which I keep going back to, is the number of actions that people set that were completed. And as I said earlier, the number of actions were 97.5% of actions set were completed. So if you would like to come along, I know I've gone 5 minutes over, which I apologize for. If you would like to come along to either of those two, or put your name on the waiting list for when the full mastermind opens up, if you go to that URL, which Mark posted in the chat box a minute ago, go away, fill in the form, put in your name, email address, tick which ones you want or you don't want, and I will gladly get in touch with you and share those with you. I am just, whilst you do that, I'm just going to run down the list of questions in order to make sure that I've covered off everything that you've asked me as a part of the setup process. So Stephen asked, how does it differ from other peer groups? Well, as I shared earlier, I think we go in a bit deeper than what most other peer groups do, because we analyze the problem rather than just coming up with solutions. So we don't brainstorm, we analyze and provide solutions. How do I produce content for clients? Well, I've covered that off. So if anybody else has got any questions that they want to post in the Q&A, please do. How do you come up with the content for clients? You listen to what they say. So if they've got problems around negotiation, you get a negotiation person, you go away and research negotiation and you share the negotiation stuff. If they've got problems with team members, you go away and find the team member stuff and deliver the team member information. There is a phrase, and this is going to sound a little bit perhaps contrived, but in the land of the blind, the one-eyed monkey is king. So if you've got some knowledge, you can share that knowledge, and then the other people in the room can build on that knowledge that you're sharing. So it's not about rocking up and bluffing your way through it. It's about providing some information, some content, and then working together as a community, as a membership group in order to improve. It's not about the guru sat at the front delivering the information, because I haven't got all the answers. You won't have all the answers if you're running the group. That's not what's expected. What's expected is for you to facilitate an open and frank and supportive conversation in order for people to get better. I'm interested, Chris shared, I'm interested in what the sell is and how, if I'm being completely honest, I've really enjoyed your support. Well, this is the sell. The Facebook group is basically the opening of my lead funnel, if I'm being sort of clinical about it. It's just the same as an email list or my LinkedIn connections, etc., etc. I love the Facebook group. I go and present at conferences, but the networking bit at lunchtime and break times is not really my favorite activity. I'm not that much of an extrovert in person. So the ability to share within an online environment, such as the Facebook group, and encourage other people to share within that online environment, I think is fantastic. So even if there was nothing coming out of it, then I would still have that group and I would still do the things that I do, purely because it's my philosophy is to inspire, challenge, and support business owners and their teams to be the best they want to be. And that Facebook group for me does that. So that's what the uptake is, Chris. If anybody wants to go deeper and further and get more support, then that's the opportunity. The opportunity is there. If they don't, then fair enough. Take what you like. And as long as you're taking action, doing stuff with it, then I am more than happy. Tony's asked, what profile of firm is it best suited to? Get asked this quite a bit. I encourage people to have team members before they join, because I think they get value then out of the team member conversations. However, there are members of the group that don't have any team members, and they take the team member stuff and treat their customers like team members. So how could we get accountability for our customers as opposed to how we get accountability for our teams? So I'm not saying it doesn't have value if you don't have team members. I just believe it's more difficult for me to deliver value if you don't have team members. But at the end of the day, that's your choice. You're more than welcome to come along, have the conversation, see if you like it. And if you don't like it, you just don't pay, is the simple thing. Ryan said about a practice being very small. Yeah, there's a couple of people that have mentioned that. I'm working on a 12-month program. It's called Accelerator at the moment. In order to help people that are just starting out or have smaller practices that I was planning to kick off at the beginning of this year, and then COVID and all the rest of it. So that's more likely to go in September, depending on how it works. But there is something coming if you don't feel as though COVID-19 or the full group is something that you want to be a part of. David asked if it can work with one partner in a 4-partner firm. I will say yes to that, subject to that partner being able to make decisions. If that partner can't make decisions without the other 3 partners, then it's a waste of time coming along, because what'll happen is you'll come along, you'll come up with all the ideas, you'll go back to the partnership committee, and it will take 6 months for it to be improved or approved or dismissed. And then I'll get frustrated, you'll get frustrated, and we'll end up, I would say falling out. That's a bit extreme, but we'll both end up being frustrated that action isn't being taken. What's the biggest thing as an accountant can get from it? Well, there's a massive amount, Paul. The chap that turned up with his social media problem, I don't think he realised that ever he would get marriage guidance counselling out of it. Who knows? Show up, be honest, be open, be frank, be vulnerable, and who knows what will come out of it. It can be as simple as a new book that you've not considered to read, changes to your numbers, marriage guidance counselling, life changing, etc., etc. Just it's a completely open world like that. And then the last one, I haven't got any questions. I'll just flick through the chat to see if there's any others in there before I finish. The last one, would you consider regional or remote events? And yes, and that's why I'm doing the remote one. I've set it up. What's the biggest thing I as an accountant was talked about? Is there support in your situation? As a growing but small accountancy firm, what would you expect me to get from the mastermind? As a last question, to be inspired, challenged, positively challenged, and supported. And that's probably a really good way of finishing off. I'll just check. Accelerator sounds more. Submitted the mastermind reservation regarding the slides. Can you have a copy of the slides? Yes, you can have a copy of the slides. I'll email them out, a copy along with a copy of the video. Filled in the form. There's a different size of practice. Yeah, that's all answered then. So just to finish off. What would you expect, or what should you expect by being a member of the community? I would like to think that through the Facebook group and the WhatsApp group, and if you're on the email list, you are continually being inspired, positively challenged, and supported by me, Mark, and the other members of the community. That is fundamentally what I do. That is the purpose. That's the way I work. So if you're getting that through the Facebook group and the WhatsApp group, then the mastermind is a more intense, open, vulnerable version of that. And that's probably the best way that I can describe it. So if you've not been on the filled in the form, fill the form in. That's the accountantsmastermind.com/OMS. Mark's just shared the Facebook group in the chat and the WhatsApp group in the chat. You're more than welcome, if you've been on this, to join either of those groups or conversations if you're not in there. And as I say, if there's anything that you need to be inspired, challenged, and supported on, or any questions that I have not answered that you would like me to answer, then I will gladly answer those questions for you. Just email me on simon@socksupsimon.com, Facebook message, WhatsApp, or whatever, and I will gladly support you. That's all for me. That's everything that I've shared. I know, forgive me, I've gone 13 minutes over. There's no more questions. I'll just make sure that's not a question. Sarah says, thank you for Mark and Simon. It's been an absolute pleasure. As I say, anybody got any questions, then please do not ever hesitate to ask. That's all for me for now. So thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.